Hello, hello, and welcome to today's weekly live show. Happy November, 1st November, Scorpio new moon. I am delighted to be here with you. Today we're talking about weekend retreat venues and the how-tos. But before we begin, I am just going to check the tech, see that we're all good, and then we'll get going. So whilst I check the tech, etc., drop me a comment, an emoji, just hit that like button if you're here with me live. It is always good to know I am not just chatting to my cats. And today we have our first Yoga Teacher Collaborative live as well, which is our free support and coaching gathering on Zoom. That'll be at 12 o'clock today. I think there's about 50 of you coming, so I'm looking forward to seeing you. It will not be recorded so that we can have a really kind of intimate, nurturing group where you can really express whatever you need to freely, without any self-censoring. So that's at 12 o'clock today. But let us dive on for today's topic. Welcome to the Yoga Teacher Collaborative podcast and weekly live show. Today we are exploring all things sourcing a weekend retreat venue. If you are new to listening to the podcast or new to the group, my name is Laura Green. I am a yoga teacher. I've been teaching for nearly 15 years and I have been running retreats for nearly 10 years. It will be the 10-year anniversary next year. I am also a business mentor for yoga teachers with one clear mission: to help you thrive. Be that by making your classes, your events, your workshops more financially viable, and also giving you space for your teaching to evolve. And running retreats is one of those things. Our last podcast episode, or our last live show last week, was on the complete do's, don'ts, and how-tos of day retreats, and I 100% recommend that you run day retreats before you run weekend retreats. And we explored that in that last episode when we were looking at how you expand your teaching experience, your ability to hold a group for longer than a class. So as I said last week, first of all, you hone your craft running yoga classes, then 2 to 3 hour workshops, then you expand to day retreats. And then, we really are talking a couple of years down the line, you are probably ready for running your first weekend retreat. Now, there is a lot that goes into running residential retreats, a lot more than day retreats. So today we are just covering one topic: how to source the venue. Remember, I do have a step-by-step free download guide that also goes into this, which is about how to set up and sell out a retreat. You'll find that for free on my website, so make sure you go get it. It is www.lauragreenyoga.co.uk/freebies. That loads my whole page of freebies. Scroll down and you'll find the one that's called something like Road Trip Guide to Setting Up and Selling Out Your Retreat. So you want that. But today we are really just looking at the sourcing of venue bit. There's many more considerations on a weekend retreat, such as the logistics, the terms and conditions, setting up with your suppliers, how to market it, how to sell it, how to actually put together a whole weekend schedule. And that is something I'm always more than delighted to mentor people through. I do one-to-one 90-minute coaching calls where we can bring all the aspects of your retreat together. But let's deal with this first hurdle together now, which is how do you source the venue? I notice a lot of people will come into our Yoga Teacher Collaborative Facebook group or go into some of the other Facebook groups going, any recommendations for a weekend retreat venue? With no other criteria. So that makes it very hard to find somewhere. You need to understand what your criteria is. What is right for you might not be right for someone else, and what's worked really well for another teacher might not be right for you. So you need to determine your venue criteria first, and then go to the collaborative groups, go to the Facebook groups. There's some really great retreat specialist Facebook groups. There's one called the Retreat Hub. It's a great Facebook group if you are looking for venues, and many of the retreat venues are in those groups. So if you just write into those groups your criteria, you can let the venues come to you, but you got to know what you're looking for first. And yes, you'll still get some suggestions outside of the box. You might end up finding something that didn't quite fit your criteria, but that you get excited and run with it. But you've got to have some criteria first. So what are those criteria? First and foremost, mile radius from where you are. And remembering that when you set up retreats, they really are for your community and for your audience. If you are trying to host a weekend retreat or a retreat abroad, and you are trying to attract a completely cold audience, that is exceptionally challenging. And due to the financial risk of running retreats, I really highly recommend you don't do that. So you want to have an established community that you are pulling together this deep dive experience for. So it's likely that that community are in a geographical area. So I am based in Hampshire. Because I obviously also teach online, I would say about 60% of my audience are local Hampshire and 40% are not local, but that is more unusual. You're probably going to be looking at about 60% of your to 70% of your retreat audience coming from your local community, and then you might get a few friends, you might pick up a few people that you don't know, but the main chunk are your community. So then what is the appropriate mile radius? And this is different for different people. You know, if I was going for a weekend away, I would probably go from Hampshire to as far as Devon. I'm happy for a good couple of hours drive, 2.5. I wouldn't go like 3-4 hours for a 2-night stay. That's too far for me. And I still think me pushing it to like 2.5 hours for my own personal travel is more than a lot of my community do. So what works for me, your audience might be different, is that I try to find a retreat venue within 90 minutes. 90 minutes is my golden. 90 minutes drive time of my community in Hampshire. I will push it to 2 hours if there's something really beautiful about that venue. And actually, do you know what? At the moment, my main weekend retreat venue is about a 20 to 30 minute drive for my community. Now, at first, I would have thought, oh, that's not far enough away. They want to get further away from home. But actually it is, because most of my students live in an urban area. And the venue I use, about 30 minutes outside of Southampton, is really rural. It's on a farm, and it just gives them that feeling of getting away without actually the added drive time. So I would say look for a mile radius of like 30 minutes if it's a different environment to where your classes are, to up to about 2 hours drive time. This could be different for slightly different audiences. I noticed a London clientele. They are used to getting out of the city on the weekend, and anyone that lives in London knows, 45 minutes, you've only just started to get out of London. So London folk will often travel a little further. But otherwise, I'd say 30 minutes to 90-minute drive time from where your community are based. And now, does it need to be accessible by public transport? I live in Hampshire. We don't have a good public transport network, so most of my students, nearly all of my students, drive. So my venues don't need to be close to public transport. But if, for instance, you're a London-based teacher or you're trying to attract a London-based audience, we know lots of people in London rely on public transport, don't necessarily have cars because it's so well served, so they are highly likely to be wanting to come out of London on public transport. So is there a good public transport connection from where your students are coming from to the venue if needed? Where I run some teacher weekend retreats, I do notice that I get an audience from further afield, and it always makes me chuckle when they say that they're going to get a train and then they'll just get an Uber. There is no Uber where I run my weekend retreats. They're like, oh, don't worry, I'll just pick a taxi up from the taxi rank at the train station. I'm like, there is no taxi rank. Like, oh, I'll call for a taxi. That'll take you 4 hours before it comes and gets you. So really know, are people going to be needing public transport? Yes or no? Most of my audience, it's a no. I can find workarounds. Then, a mile radius, drive time from where you are, draw that circle, and you're going to start to look for a venue in there. Then decide for you, for your audience, what kind of vibe are you going for? Do you want something really rural, in the middle of the countryside? Is that a kind of escape for your audience? Are they urban? Or in fact, you actually fancy an urban retreat. I've never done this, but oh my God, it would so work. Would you fancy like an urban city retreat? So say for instance, where we live in Hampshire, we don't have kind of great restaurants, great places to go out. So absolutely could do a little city retreat, say somewhere like Brighton, where you book a townhouse, maybe you get dressed up, you know, that option to go out and do something. So that's not what I do, but it's definitely not off the table if that excites you. So do you want a rural retreat? Do you want a kind of cool urban retreat? Or do you want coastal? Okay, so again, you know, maybe that your retreat's only half an hour away, but it's coastal, and most of your people live 30 minutes inland, so that's exciting to go to the coast for the weekend, even though it's not that far. So have a feel into your heart and soul, and you know, really do create these retreats on what excites you, because if it excites you, it's going to excite your audience. So drive time from home, accessible to public transport. Are you looking for urban, rural, coastal? What do you fancy? Then the rooms, the bedrooms. You need to decide whether it's twin, single, dormitories, or shared. And again, just go based on what works for you and what makes financial sense. I find a lot of teachers say to me, oh, their audience all want single rooms. This will make it a lot more expensive for you to run a retreat, because if you think, okay, I'm aiming to take 12 people, I need to find a venue with 12 plus you, so let's go 13 rooms. Now you're starting to look at a really big house, a stately house type thing with 12, 13 rooms. That is going to be expensive. Versus if you were doing twin and you're aiming to take 12 people, that's 6 rooms, one for you, 7 rooms. That's suddenly a much smaller property that is still big, but it's going to be more affordable. If you give your community the choice of single room, many people will choose to book single. Then you're either going to be having a venue where suddenly you've only got 6 people and it's hard to make it profitable, or you're having to really risk the finances of booking somewhere massive and putting down a huge deposit. What I do is I always allow at least 2 rooms to be single. And when those 2 rooms have sold out, tough. There is only twin left. And what I tend to find is many people will go, oh, I'd kind of rather single, but you've only got twin, so okay, I'll book twin. But if I'd given them choice, all of those rooms would have gone as single. So for instance, the venue where I run my yoga teacher weekend retreats, there is only, let me just add this up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There is only 6 rooms. So if I just let people book it however they wanted, they would go as single and I'd only end up with 6 students and I'd set my price and then suddenly it wouldn't be profitable to run. But where I go, look, of those 6 rooms, I'll let 2 go as single. And they are because actually they're a master bed and I can't split them anyway. So it can be a couple or single. And there's a single supplement on it, it costs more money. Then once they are gone, the single rooms are sold out. I only have left twin or I have one triple room there. And then people tend to opt for the twin or the triple if they want to spend that time with you. So you need to pre-decide based on your budget. Are you looking for twin, triple, single, or even dormitories? Dormitories is a deal breaker for me. As soon as I see a retreat is people of 4+ to a room, I'm out of there. But your audience might feel very differently to that. Having dormitories might make your retreat affordable, and people that otherwise couldn't do it could do it. Then the bathroom setup. So again, this is my opinion. You and your audience will be different. I personally don't like to have really more than 2 people per bathroom. I often have one room that's triple, and that'll be 3 to a bathroom, and that is because I want to give an option that is more affordable. So I tend to have triple, twin, single, so that there is a broader price point for people. And yes, the triple will be 3 people to 1 bathroom, but my personal preference really is no more than 2 to a bathroom. My place in Spain, I have 2 single rooms that share an interconnecting bathroom. So that is fine for me, and it's advertised clearly as that. I prefer that they're en suite, but it's not always a deal breaker because en suite is obviously a much more modern invention. And I like to go for older houses where they'll have converted lots of rooms into bathrooms and then have the bedrooms. So as long as it's still no more than 2, 3 at an absolute push to a bathroom, it doesn't matter to me so much if it's en suite. It's about the number of people that are sharing it, and demanding that it's en suite cuts down my choice and takes out some of the older properties. So for me, it's about the number of bathrooms as opposed to being en suite. If I can get en suite, yes please. All right, moving on. You've got your rooms. You determine how many are twin, triple, single. You determine the price point of those accordingly based on your budget. Now, what other space does the venue have? I like to have a separate space for yoga from the relaxation space. So I like there to be a lounge space that is big enough for everybody to be able to chill out, read the book. Okay? I don't want that also to be my yoga space. Because if it was going to be the yoga space, you're having to move all the furniture all the time, and then you're having to set up the yoga, then unpack the yoga, return it to a lounge space. So that is a deal breaker for me. It might not be for you. You might be okay to push back the sofas and use the lounge for yoga. But I ideally want to have a separate space. I'm running a really intimate retreat in the end of November, actually for my birthday. It's my 40th birthday, and I'm getting together all of my friends, and we're just doing a retreat for us. There's only 8 of us, and we have 2 lounges. So the place has 2 lounges. One of the lounges will be used as a relaxation space. The other lounge will be pushing back the furniture and converting that to a yoga space. So it doesn't matter that it's not a dedicated yoga retreat room for me, but that it is 2 separate spaces. And obviously, is that yoga space big enough to be able to comfortably teach everyone in one class? When I first started running retreats, I was using a place over in Arundel, and they had a really nice yoga room, but it was only big enough to teach half of the group. So I had to teach every morning class twice and every evening class twice, and split my group in half for yoga. That really restricted the length the yoga classes could be. You know, then only like an hour because I had to do them twice. And obviously it was more exhausting for me. So it is an option if this venue is perfect for you in every other way, but it's not ideal. You really want the yoga room where you can have everybody together with enough room to be comfortable. Then the dining space. Is there a dining table that is big enough to get everyone around? And this is sometimes means some venues are a deal breaker. Like there's this one venue I love that's lots of different holiday cottages. But each holiday cottage is kind of suited to take about 4 people and has a dining space ready for like 4 to 6 people max. When I go there and take 3 cottages, I want to get everybody to dine around one table. Luckily, that venue actually have a party barn, which is big enough to get everybody in. But if you've gone for this, actually I'm using multiple cottages, is there one space that's going to be big enough to get everyone around for dinner and get everyone in one space for yoga. Again, it might not be a deal breaker for you if people are dining in separate cottages, but it will change the feel of the retreat. It'll make it kind of much cliquier, or that could be intimate in the individual cottages and people just coming for yoga. So think that through. I want to get everyone together in one space for dinner. One of my venues now, that's around 2 tables, but they're still in one dining room together. Then, are you having any other facilitators that would need a separate functioning space? Example, massage therapist. I bring an external massage therapist on my retreats. It's not included. People then have the option to book a treatment, for a 30, 45 minute, 60-minute treatment, but therefore I have to have a space where my massage therapist can set up. It might be, a reception area that you can make pretty. It doesn't have to be a treatment room. Think outside the box, but is there a private space for any additional facilitators that you're having in? Or do you work your yoga timetable around it so the massages happen in the yoga space? Think this through so you know your requirements of the venue. And of course, that goes into bedrooms for any facilitators. Are you staying on site? Probably yes. It just happens that one of my venues at the moment is only a 10-minute drive from my house. So after everyone's gone to bed, I do drive home, and before everyone's got up, I drive back. But I wouldn't do that normally. So are you going to be taking out a bedroom? Is there, and how does that affect the profit? Ideal, you have a bedroom, maybe it's, the least good of all the bedrooms and that's the one you're in. But again, if the venue's perfect, it doesn't have to be a deal breaker. I have, back when I was first starting retreats, so like 10 years ago, I did used to take an airbed and sleep on the same floor as the yoga, but therefore the venue had to have a downstairs bathroom somewhere that I could wash. I have slept on a sofa bed, but again, I would make sure all of my guests had gone to bed. They didn't see that I was using it as a room. I'm not hiding it from them, but I don't want them to see that or feel uncomfortable in the space. And then I'll quick convert it to somewhere for me to sleep and wrap it back up. But clearly that's not ideal, but not a deal breaker. And then, are you bringing a caterer? We'll talk about that in a moment. But if it is an off-site caterer, do they need somewhere to stay? Have they got their own camper van? Could they bring a camper van? And same, if you're bringing an on-site massage therapist, are they local? Can they go home? Or do they need to stay? The more facilitators that you're needing to stay, the more that's going to knock into your profit because you can't sell those rooms to other people. Now, what about kitchen? The kitchen. Is the kitchen large enough and well enough supplied to cater for the number of people you have? This can be a problem with the kind of multiple cottages options because the kitchens might just be small enough to cook a meal for a family of 4. If you've got multiple cottages, how are you going to manage that? Again, it's not a deal breaker. You need to think this stuff through in advance. Are you using a local caterer who can predominantly cook at home and then just bring things in to be warmed up? Or are you bringing your own on-site caterer that's going to need a fully functioning kitchen and equipment? What I find with retreat spaces and venues is they're super inconsistent in the equipment and kitchen-based supplies they have. It doesn't matter to me what you have, but I need to know what you have so that I'm knowing what I'm bringing. For instance, serving platters. Do they have serving platters big enough for the number of guests you have? It doesn't matter if they don't, you can take them, but you need to know. Do they supply tea, coffee, sugar like some people do, some venues do, or do you have to bring that? Does your caterer have to bring that? Do they have a juicer if you're doing juice in the morning, or do you need to bring that? There is no consistency, and what you tend to find if you use places year on year is that it's not consistent. Stuff gets broken, stuff gets lost, and it's very frustrating because you just need to know what's there and bring the rest. Do you require there to be anything else with the venue? So do you want there to be a nice walk that you can do from the premises? Can you go ahead of your retreat and plan out the walk, or is there somewhere that can take you on the walk? When I've used stately homes that have still had an owner, I love it if the owner will take the walk, because it's a real opportunity for people to learn about the history of the area, and it adds a little magic. Normally I pay them for it, so you have to factor that into the budget. Are there any of the extra luxuries like a sauna, a pool, a hot tub? As soon as they've got more luxuries, that price point is going up. It is not essential. My main venue at the moment has none of that. I think they might have just added a portable sauna, but I haven't used it yet. They have none of that. There is a venue I love with a hot tub and a pool, but it's super expensive. So it's an added luxury, but please don't make it a necessity unless your budget can handle that. So talking about budget, what is the price you can expect to pay? It ranges wildly from where you are in the country. If you are within like a 90 minutes of London, it is definitely going to be more expensive. If you're coming further down to Hampshire, Dorset, Devon, it's going to be slightly cheaper, but not much. If you're going further north, it is going to be a little cheaper. So working that through, I pay, and again, you know, I love to just give you numbers, but please, everything varies. I pay roughly £2,600 up to £3,400 for weekend venue hire, for venues that taking anywhere from 13, so that lower amount, 2,600, is about 12, 13 people. The 3,000 plus mark, I need to be taking like 18 people, 16 to 18 people. You will probably find some venues cheaper, but they might have things like dormitories, not a separate yoga space, stuff that's a deal breaker for me. And you will find venues that are a lot more expensive. You know, maybe they come with their sauna, their pool, their hot tub, this, that, and the other. That's outside of my audience's budget. So I'm 2.6 to 3.4, in and around there. If it's that higher end, I really need to start to be taking like 16 plus people. Lower end, you know, maybe 12 to 13 people. That is just a guide to get you going. So then where do you find these venues? Top tip. If it is an established yoga retreat venue, or if it is a venue that is already hosting lots of other yoga retreats, they're gonna know what you need as a retreat leader, but they're gonna be more expensive. Because once they've cottoned on to that market, they know they can charge more. If you can be the first person to be running a yoga retreat somewhere, you will generally be able to get a cheaper hire. Now, I have had this privilege multiple times of being the first retreat somewhere. I remember my very first venue about 10 years ago. I think I was paying like £1,300. Now that same venue is over £3,000. Yes, they've got some more facilities since then, but they just cottoned on to the market. So yes, look for retreat venues. Yes, go on the yoga retreat Facebook groups. Yes, look on the website retreathub.com. Yes, look for those and get the budget, the price of already experienced established retreat venues. But then also look in other places. at places that haven't yet hosted retreats. So for instance, Google party houses, hen party houses, big houses for hire, and look through all of those. And rather than looking at them and making a decision on them, just find a load and send emails out to loads of them with your requirements. Do you have twin rooms? Do you have a lounge space and a separate space that I could practice yoga in? Do you have a kitchen? What is your check-in, check-out time? What is your availability? Send me a price. Just get that standard email and send it out to loads of places. Then when the places come back, then start sorting them through and deciding whether you like them or not. But don't worry about doing that groundwork until you've just fired out a load of communication emails. Look on Airbnb. Airbnb is super easy. You can search by the number of bedrooms you want. You can put in a mile radius. Prices on Airbnb have rocketed quite a lot since COVID, but it's still a great place to look. And this is a cheeky little tip. Many of the places I have found on Airbnb will give me a cheaper price if I find them externally to Airbnb. Okay? And then Airbnb add on lots of service charges, cleaning charges, etc., etc. So for instance, the place we're going in Somerset for my birthday, I found it on Airbnb. Then I found their website off Airbnb and I have booked it off Airbnb. Booking via Airbnb obviously gives you some financial protection if you have booked somewhere that isn't real, that is a scam. But if you can use your own discernment and work out whether somewhere is real that's not on Airbnb, you will probably get a cheaper price. So Airbnb will often not be exactly clear on where it is, or give you the kind of full name of the place because they'd rather you book through the system. But you can take the images, save the images and do a Google reverse image search and then normally find them that way. That is a really cheeky tip that I am giving you there. I hope it helps you. So reverse image search the images and then try and find the venue off Airbnb and make direct contact that way. You will usually get a better price, and especially if you've seen it on Airbnb and you've seen your reviews, you know it's legit, it's not a scam, even if you then go and book it off Airbnb. Clearly there is not just Airbnb. There are country cottage websites, there's the Wow House website, there's all other alternatives to Airbnb, so go and look on those other ones as well. Then things like classic bed and breakfasts, you know, small bed and breakfast. There's one near me, it's got 6 rooms, it's got some lovely lounge spaces. So you can talk to bed and breakfast hotels about exclusive hire. You could also run a weekend retreat in a hotel. That is an option where you take X many rooms and they have a function space. So think outside the box, especially if you need to be creative with your budget. And then look on the retreat groups on Facebook and ask. Then next up comes to negotiating your terms with them. Normally you don't have that much wiggle room. So for instance, said one wiggle room is asking for a better price if you go direct rather than Airbnb. Another thing to negotiate is say it's got a lot of room or can take a lot of people. So like some of the ones I go to can take like 15 people and there's X amount for this meant for say it's £3,000 for the weekend for up to 14 people, then £100 per additional person over. That can be a really good way because it can lessen your risk instead of having to pay per person. So things like that, you know, can you do a minimum amount and then X amount for every person over it? So that's not really changing the price, but it's changing your risk a little bit. One thing you can negotiate is how long they'll hold it for without a deposit. So I like to work quite far ahead of time so that I might book something for, say, end of next year. I'll say, look, I really want to book these dates for next year. I know it's really far ahead. Would you consider just holding the dates for me for 2 weeks, or holding the dates for me on a first refusal basis whilst I go and market this to my audience, and then I'll pay the deposit? Some will say, yep, they'll hold it for 2 weeks. Some will hold it for longer. So for instance, I just hosted a safari retreat in Tanzania. And that was a financial risk because it was a lot of money. So they held it for me because I booked so far in advance. It was about 18 months. They held it for me for 6 weeks without me putting a deposit so that I could go to my audience, find out who wanted to book it, and then once I had some deposits from my audience, then I could go and pay their deposit. So try that. It might be, yeah, they'll hold it for a week. They might hold it for 2 weeks. They might hold it for 6 weeks. They might hold it just on first refusal. That, yeah, they'll hold it for you, but as soon as they get another inquiry, you've got to put your deposit down. And then go to your audience, especially if you're new at running retreats. This really minimizes your risk. If you can then go to your audience and request that they book and give you a deposit and explain that you need a minimum of 10 people, 6 people for this to run. If it doesn't run, they'll get their deposit back. Then once you've got their deposit, you can then use that deposit to pay your venue deposit, if your venue will work with you like that. Otherwise, you're just going to have to take a big breath, trust that you have a community big enough, and pay your deposit. Normally, they are non-refundable, so just take a moment before you make that decision. Then, when is your balance due? Make sure you tie the balance due with when you ask the balance payment from your guests. So if your venue's like the balance is due 8 weeks before, then you need to tell your guests that their balance is due 10 weeks before. So that gives you 2 weeks to get the balance payment in before you have to pay your venue balance. Because cash flow is really important when it comes to retreats. You have to send the money out sometimes before you might have money in. So make sure you're doing your best to manage your cash flow. Other thing to negotiate is the check-in and check-out time. Often they're quite late check-in. So often if you're doing like a Friday to Sunday retreat, you'll get like a 4 o'clock check-in. Now that is really good for your guests because it has some time to arrive, have a cup of tea, a piece of cake, then get in an afternoon yoga practice before dinner. But you must arrive before that because you've got to set the space, you've got to check everything. You might want to set up the yoga space, make changes, get your caterer in. So that definitely has to be negotiated. I like to arrive by lunchtime. 1 o'clock is when I like to arrive, and then my guests check in at 4 o'clock. And I say to places like the venues, doesn't need to be perfect. The rooms don't need to be done. I just need to get into the kitchen and the yoga space. So, your cleaning crew can be working whilst I'm working. And then what is check-out time? Again, some places have a really early checkout time of 10 on a Sunday. That's really restrictive for your retreat. You want to be able to kind of get up, do yoga, have brunch. So can you negotiate like an 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock checkout time? So really do consider that. And also thinking, is this a 2-night retreat? Is this a 3-night retreat? Sometimes doing Thursday to Saturday will be cheaper than Friday to Sunday. So see if you need to have some creative wiggle room that way. Okay, my loves. I think that is everything I wanted to cover today on venues. Clearly there is so much more involved to running residential retreats. I am here for you to do the 90-minute coaching calls to bring your retreats to life. My coaching calls, they're £120, 90 minutes, you get all of my brain, and we can bring your retreat to life, whether it's weekend, whether it's a week abroad. We can do that in a 90-minute coaching call, or go on the website and download that freebie as well, www.lauragreenyoga.co.uk/freebies. Scroll through the freebies and you'll find that road trip guide to selling out your retreats. If you did want a coaching call to bring your retreat to life, either just message me and I'll send you back the link, or on my website, under the page it says Beyond YTT, so Beyond Yoga Teacher Training, there is a bit that says coaching call. That opens up my calendar and gives you a chance to book a slot. And let's get your retreat happening. Thank you for being here, my loves. Any questions, takeaways, pop them in the comments, message me. I am here for you. Bye for now.